but the way you enter a room. How you breathe, how you hold yourself, how your eyes observe the world. These quiet signals tell more of your beauty than your reflection in the mirror ever could. In the stillness of your being, others feel their own longing for peace. That is beauty. And sometimes, especially as we grow older, what makes you good looking is not what you show. It is what you no longer need to prove. A younger woman may turn heads with her appearance, but an older woman who has mastered her energy, she turns hearts. This is not about physical attraction alone. It is about presence, and presence is cultivated, not inherited. There are moments in life when a woman walks into a room and, without speaking a single word, everyone turns. Yet it is not because she is loud, nor because she is dressed in anything particularly attention-seeking. There is something else, something you cannot define by color, weight, or age. It is presence, and presence is not taught in beauty magazines or manufactured in a clinic. It is felt. It is what makes people sit up a little straighter. It is what causes a man, regardless of how distracted he may be, to pause. Not just because he sees something pleasing to the eye, but because something within him senses a frequency he has not encountered in a while. This is the kind of beauty that begins where the mirror ends. The first sign that a woman is good looking in her older years, whether she recognizes it or not, is the energy she carries. Not the kind of energy that screams for validation, but the quiet kind that settles a room. This is not about youth, but resonance. People may not remember the details of your face, but they will remember how they felt in your presence. If they felt safer, more grounded, more seen, that is beauty in its most enduring form. In neuroscience, we often speak of the limbic system, the emotional brain that connects us without language. What is fascinating is that this part of the brain does not respond to reason, but to rhythm. It reacts to energy, emotional tone, facial expression, intonation, the way someone breathes near you. These signals are subtle but powerful. A woman who has developed internal harmony will transmit this without even realizing it. Her nervous system speaks to others on a level beyond words. In Eastern philosophy, there is a similar understanding. A woman's inner chi, her life force, is shaped by the quality of her thoughts, the stillness of her emotions, the steadiness of her breath. And over time, these inner movements form a kind of aura. It is not mystical. It is tangible. You can feel it. Have you ever met someone whose smile made you feel nourished, even if they said nothing, or someone whose mere presence settled the chaos within you? That is key. That is energetic beauty. This is why some women in their 60s or 70s are more captivating than others in their 20s. Not because they've tried harder to preserve their looks, but because they've cultivated their energy. They've refined what they allow into their emotional space. They've learned not to react to every trigger, not to entertain every conflict, not to invest in every passing judgment. There is a lightness in their step and a softness in their gaze that says, I have learned, I have let go, and I am here. People crave this energy, not because it entertains, but because it heals. In relationship dynamics, this quality becomes even more important. Emotional energy, especially in long-term partnerships, often carries more weight than appearance. A man may initially be attracted to what he sees, but he stays because of what he feels. Does he feel calm in your presence or tension? Does he feel admired or judged, uplifted or depleted? These are not always spoken aloud, but they register deeply. One woman told the story of how, after years of dating without much success, she decided to stop focusing on how she looked and started focusing on how she felt. She took daily walks in silence. She stopped engaging in gossip. She practiced deeper breathing. She journaled about her pain and forgave people who had hurt her. She started enjoying her own company, and slowly something shifted. She didn't look drastically different, but people began to treat her differently. They complimented her glow. They told her she seemed more present. It wasn't that the world had changed. It was that her energy had become clear. The truth is, we live in a world that overvalues how things appear and undervalues how things feel. But as we age, we begin to notice something. Appearances fade, but frequency stays. If a woman feels grounded in her skin, if her soul is no longer fighting itself, if her breath flows without tension, she becomes magnetically attractive without trying. She does not need to dominate a room to fill it with her light. Even the way she holds silence speaks. That silence is cultivated over years of choosing peace over drama. It is the silence of someone who no longer needs to prove, compete, or chase. And ironically, that is what draws people in. There is a saying in the East, to those who have inner light, the whole world becomes drawn to them. Inner light does not mean perfection. It means alignment. A woman whose actions, words, thoughts, and values begin to move in the same direction becomes coherent. And coherence is powerful. When she laughs, you believe it. When she listens, you feel heard. When she speaks, there is no urgency, no fear behind her voice, only truth. That's when others begin to ask, what's her secret? But it isn't a secret, it is discipline. A daily return to herself. It is choosing what to entertain, what to let pass, and what to nourish. This leads to the second and deeply connected sign of beauty in older women's emotional stability. Now, emotional stability is not the absence of feeling. It is not indifference or detachment. It is the strength to feel deeply, without losing your center. And this is incredibly attractive, because it is rare. In modern society, many people confuse passion with chaos. They assume emotional outbursts are signs of depth. But real emotional depth is not how loudly you speak your pain. It is how wisely you hold it. A woman who has become emotionally stable doesn't numb her emotions. She integrates them. She feels disappointment, but she doesn't drown in it. She feels anger, but she doesn't erupt. She allows emotions to visit, but not to live permanently in her home. This quality changes everything, especially in relationships. In psychology, we know that one of the most attractive traits in a partner is emotional regulation. When a person can remain calm in conflict, when they can listen without reacting defensively, when they can respond instead of explode, the relationship becomes a space of growth instead of warfare. For a woman, developing emotional stability over the years is not just a skill, it is a mark of deep beauty, because the people around her begin to associate her with safety. And in a world full of volatility, people crave safety. A man may think he wants excitement, but he stays with the woman who brings him peace. Emotional stability also changes the way a woman sees herself. She is no longer driven by insecurity. She doesn't scroll through social media comparing wrinkles. She doesn't chase compliments or fear rejection. She knows that her worth is not on trial, and that quiet confidence transforms her posture, her eyes, her words. She is not just attractive, she is trustworthy. There's a woman I once met who had been through a painful divorce. For years, she carried resentment and regret. But slowly, she began to process the emotions rather than suppress them. She took up Tai Chi. She started therapy. She practiced mindfulness. And one day, she said something profound. I still remember the pain, but it doesn't move me the same way. I've learned to sit with it, like an old friend who sometimes visits, but no longer overstays. This is emotional mastery. It is the art of noticing your waves without being swept away by them. And when a woman reaches this point, her beauty evolves into something far more powerful than appearance. It becomes presence. It becomes wisdom. Even in the small things, this shows. When someone interrupts her, she doesn't rush to defend. When someone criticizes her, she doesn't crumble. She listens. She reflects, and then she responds from choice, not compulsion. This space between stimulus and response is where her power lies. From a physiological standpoint, this also has profound effects. Emotional stability calms the nervous system. When the nervous system is calm, the body ages more gracefully. Cortisol levels drop, sleep improves, digestion improves, even skin quality benefits. The face softens when the soul is not clenched in reactivity. So yes, emotional peace becomes physical beauty, and over time, people begin to notice. Not necessarily because of flawless skin, but because of the feeling they get when you are near. They don't quite know how to name it. They may say you seem radiant, or that there's something about you that feels different. But what they are sensing is that you are not burdened by your own emotions. You have become the calm in the storm, not the storm itself. This creates a different rhythm in your relationships. Instead of chasing, you attract. Instead of clinging, you connect. Instead of trying to be understood, you begin to understand. And that understanding deepens your beauty. A woman once asked, "How do I know if I am beautiful now that I am older?" The answer is simple. What happens to others in your presence? Do they feel safer? Do they feel seen? Do they feel inspired to grow? If so, your beauty is doing more than shine. It is healing. True emotional beauty is not loud. It is not desperate. It is centered, spacious, and compassionate. And the woman who carries this becomes not just someone to look at, but someone to learn from. She becomes a teacher without a classroom, a muse without needing to perform, a mirror that shows others what is possible when you stop chasing love and start becoming it. She is not admired because she demands attention. She is admired because she no longer needs it. And in that space of self-contained wholeness, she becomes magnetic, without trying, without effort, just by being. And that, no matter what the world says, is the most good-looking quality a woman can carry into her later years. There is something deeply captivating about a woman who knows who she is. Not because she's the loudest in the room, not because she's the most decorated or externally validated, but because there's an unmistakable stillness within her. It is as if she carries her home inside her, unshaken by the winds of opinion, untouched by the need to prove anything to anyone. That is the kind of confidence that doesn't scream, but whispers powerfully. A woman like this doesn't seek approval. She sees herself. She recognizes her worth without needing to display it. She lives in her own rhythm, and that rhythm commands respect. Confidence, when rooted in self-knowledge, transcends the temporary nature of physical beauty. It doesn't fluctuate with the approval of others or disappear with age. It deepens. It evolves. And this evolution makes a woman profoundly attractive, especially in her later years. She may not fit society's narrow standard of beauty, but when she speaks, people listen. When she walks into a room, others feel her presence before they notice her appearance. This is not surface confidence, the kind that is fragile and dependent on praise. This is the kind that comes from years of looking inward, questioning, healing, refining. It is spiritual posture, an alignment between who she is and how she shows up in the world. In relationships, this quality shifts everything. A woman who knows herself does not fall into roles she did not choose. She is not a performer. She is not molded by the hopes or fears of others. She does not compromise her truth to fit into someone else's narrative. Instead, she brings herself fully, honestly, completely. And because of this, she offers her partner something invaluable: authenticity. That authenticity builds trust. And trust, more than chemistry or charm, is the foundation of deep connection. There's a kind of beauty that blossoms in the space where a woman stops asking, Am I enough for them? And begins asking, are they aligned with who I truly am? That shift is subtle, but life-altering. It signals the end of self-abandonment and the beginning of genuine self-respect. From that point onward, she no longer approaches relationships from a place of deficiency, but from overflow. She no longer seeks to be completed by another because she has made peace with her own wholeness. One woman in her 50s shared how, after decades of placing her worth in her relationships, she began a journey inward. It started with small changes, spending time alone without feeling lonely, setting boundaries without guilt, saying no without apology. She began to listen to her intuition, the quiet inner voice that she had silenced for years. Slowly, she stopped molding herself to fit the expectations of others. And with each step, she noticed something remarkable. The more she returned to her authentic self, the more radiant she felt. People around her noticed too. Not because she changed her style or lost weight, but because her presence had shifted. She was no longer afraid to be seen as she truly was. That was the transformation. Confidence rooted in self-knowledge is not built in a day. It is the result of facing your pain and no longer allowing it to define you. It is looking at the parts of yourself that once made you ashamed and choosing to embrace them with compassion. It is forgiving yourself for the years you lived small and then walking forward with clarity. This process takes time. It takes discipline, but the reward is a kind of peace that cannot be bought or borrowed, and this peace is deeply attractive. In psychology, there is something called secure attachment. It describes a person who feels safe in themselves and therefore creates safety in their relationships. These individuals do not chase love, nor do they run from it. They approach it with openness and strength. A confident woman with secure self-knowledge brings this kind of energy. She does not overreact when someone pulls away, nor does she become dependent when someone gets close. She holds her center. And from this center, she loves, not out of need, but from freedom. This freedom creates space in a relationship. Space for the other person to be honest. Space for growth. Space for real intimacy to develop. Because when one person in the relationship is anchored, the relationship has a better chance of weathering the inevitable storms of life. This is also why confidence becomes more refined with age. The older woman has usually experienced enough disappointments to no longer confuse rejection with inadequacy. She understands that not all endings are failures. Some are redirections, some are necessary, and she's learned that protecting her peace is more important than pleasing everyone. There's a profound dignity in a woman who knows she doesn't need to entertain what doesn't nourish her. She doesn't waste energy proving her worth to people who are not equipped to see it. She simply steps away with grace, with kindness, with quiet certainty, and the world watches in awe because there is strength in knowing when to stay, but even greater strength in knowing when to walk away. In Eastern thought, this kind of self-knowing is considered a high form of wisdom. The phrase often used is wu wei, translated loosely as effortless action. It means the kind of movement that comes from alignment rather than struggle. A confident woman doesn't force outcomes. She aligns her actions with her values, and from that place, her life flows. She does not chase opportunity. It finds her. Not because she is lucky, but because her energy is clear. People want to work with her, be near her, learn from her, not because she sells herself, but because she is herself. And this includes romantic relationships. It is often said that a woman who is confident in herself becomes intimidating to those who are not ready. But in truth, she is not intimidating. She is simply unshakable. Those who fear her are often those who have not yet faced their own insecurities. A man who has done the inner work will not find her intimidating. He will find her inspiring. Because her confidence invites honesty, her self-awareness calls others to a higher standard, and her boundaries create safety for real love to grow. Confidence, when rooted in self-knowledge, also affects how a woman carries her body. Her posture changes, her pace changes. There's no frantic rush to keep up, no desperation to impress. She walks slowly, but with direction. She speaks with pause, but with clarity. Even her gestures are mindful. She is not trying to be anyone else, and that authenticity makes her unforgettable. From a physiological perspective, this state of self-assured calm also regulates the body. Confidence activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode. This state supports digestion, sleep, skin health, and emotional resilience. When a woman feels safe in herself, her body softens, her shoulders drop, her face relaxes. She glows, not from cosmetics, but from coherence. A woman once shared how she spent most of her 20s and 30s pretending to be confident, pretending to be happy, pretending to be enough. But every night, she felt the ache of misalignment. She wanted to be loved for who she truly was, but she hadn't yet shown that version to anyone, not even herself. It wasn't until she began sitting quietly, reflecting deeply, and reconnecting with her forgotten passions that something changed. She picked up old hobbies. She reconnected with her faith. She forgave herself. And one day, she said, "I stopped pretending, and the people who truly saw me never left." That was the day she began to live. There is a difference between a woman who enters a room hoping to be noticed and one who enters knowing she belongs. The former seeks approval, the latter brings it with her. The former performs, the latter offers presence, and in that offering, others find permission to drop their own masks. That is the silent power of true confidence. This kind of woman doesn't need to compete. She doesn't gossip. She doesn't diminish other women to feel better about herself. Her self-worth is not built on being the most admired or the most praised. It is built on alignment with truth, and truth does not fluctuate with trends. It is timeless. In the realm of romantic relationships, this becomes especially potent. Because she does not try to be chosen, she chooses. She does not beg for affection. She extends love consciously, without fear. She does not manipulate with silence or need validation through constant reassurance. She communicates clearly. She gives space, and she holds space. This emotional maturity becomes a sanctuary for any man who is ready to meet her there. She also knows the value of solitude. Not the lonely kind, but the sacred kind. The kind that allows her to recharge, to reflect, to realign. In solitude, she does not feel abandoned. She feels at home. And this inner home is what she brings to every connection, romantic or otherwise. It is not a house of pain, but of peace. And when a woman lives from this place, she redefines beauty. She teaches others not through words, but through presence. That beauty is not in being seen, but in being known, and knowing oneself so deeply that no one else's perception can disturb the truth. She no longer needs the mirror to remind her who she is. She has become the mirror, reflecting the highest in herself and inviting others to do the same. She is not afraid to age because she is not clinging to what is fading. She is anchored in what is eternal. And those around her, they feel it, they see it, even if they can't explain it. They just know this woman is not here to impress. She is here to live and to love from her center. A woman who is truly radiant often carries with her something invisible yet unmistakable emotional discipline. It is not loud. It doesn't need to be. Like the roots of a tree holding firm beneath the soil, emotional discipline stabilizes her in moments when others might react, lose control, or fall into the same patterns of dysfunction. She has learned, often through pain, and repeated disappointment, that mastering her emotions is not the same as suppressing them. Instead, it means responding with clarity rather than reacting from chaos. This type of inner mastery is not always praised in the world we live in. We are often encouraged to speak without pause, to vent our frustrations instantly, and to call it authenticity. But real authenticity arises not from unfiltered emotion, but from conscious awareness. It is the difference between screaming in anger and calmly asserting a boundary. One may feel powerful in the moment, but the other creates true change. And a good-looking older woman, one who radiates strength and grace, has often chosen the latter again and again until it became her way of being. Her emotional maturity becomes visible in how she handles disagreement. In the heat of a difficult conversation, she does not raise her voice to prove her point. She doesn't seek to win. She listens, not to reply, but to understand. She observes, not to judge, but to discern what is truly happening beneath the surface. And when she speaks, her words are intentional. They do not wound, even when they are firm. They guide, even when they challenge. This is the mark of someone who has done the inner work to master herself first, before attempting to influence others. In romantic relationships, this emotional discipline becomes transformative. A younger version of herself may have panicked when someone didn't call back right away. She may have sent long emotional texts, over-explaining her worth or over-analyzing what went wrong. But now, she knows how to pause. She knows how to breathe through the discomfort of uncertainty. She understands that time reveals truth and that desperation only clouds clarity. This wisdom frees her. It gives her the space to observe rather than chase, to choose rather than beg. Consider a woman named Alina, who after 2 failed marriages, found herself single in her mid-50s. When a new man entered her life, charming, attentive, seemingly aligned, she felt the old habits trying to rise, the urge to merge too quickly, the hope that he might be the one. But this time, something was different. She didn't fall headfirst. She walked slowly. She observed his actions over his promises. When conflict appeared, she didn't escalate. She paused. She asked herself, am I being triggered? Or is this a real red flag? And most importantly, she reminded herself that her peace was not something she would trade for temporary affection. That decision, born from emotional discipline, saved her months, perhaps years, of heartache, and it led her to a deeper sense of self-respect than any relationship ever had. Emotional discipline is also seen in how a woman handles her own inner storms. Everyone has moments of doubt, insecurity, or fear, but instead of being ruled by them, she knows how to sit with them. She has rituals, walking in silence, journaling before reacting, meditating when the world feels heavy. These practices aren't trendy habits, they are sacred tools. They help her maintain equilibrium, and this equilibrium is what makes her presence so powerful. She becomes a safe space for others, not because she absorbs their chaos, but because she doesn't allow their chaos to disrupt her center. From the perspective of neuroscience, this type of regulation engages the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational decision-making and empathy. It quiets the amygdala, which is responsible for fear and aggression. In other words, emotional discipline isn't just spiritual, it's biological. A woman who cultivates stillness rewires her brain to favor calm over conflict, understanding over outburst, and that neural wiring becomes visible in her relationships. Her partner feels safer, her friendships deepen, and her decisions become more aligned. There is a wisdom story from the East about a woman who carried a bowl of water on her head as she walked through a busy village. Her task was to deliver the water without spilling a single drop. Children ran past her, merchants shouted, carts rattled, but she walked steadily. When someone asked her how she managed to stay so focused, she replied, "Because I know what I carry is too precious to waste." That is what emotional discipline looks like. A woman knows that her peace is too precious to waste on drama. Her dignity is too valuable to be spilled in moments of thoughtless reaction. So she walks carefully, not out of fear, but out of reverence for what she carries within. And people feel this. They may not be able to name it, but they feel the difference between someone who is emotionally scattered and someone who is emotionally sovereign. Sovereignty is attractive. It is magnetic. It's not about having all the answers or never feeling upset. It's about how quickly you return to your center when life tries to pull you off course. In a romantic relationship, this looks like the ability to communicate honestly without collapsing. When her partner disappoints her, she doesn't immediately spiral into assumptions or accusations. She expresses her feelings,